Today, we will learn English through a story that also teaches wisdom. The story of Albert Enstein, one of the greatest thinkers in history, who showed the world the power of curiosity, perseverance, and imagination. This story is written in simple and clear English to help you practice reading, understanding, and reflecting, while also learning values such as patience, creativity, and determination. As you follow each part, notice how words and ideas connect, and how one person's journey can inspire you to see challenges as opportunities for growth. Just as Enstein built his understanding of the universe step by step, you too can grow in confidence, discipline, and knowledge by studying a little every day, believing in your potential, and never giving up on your dreams. Let's begin. The quiet beginning. In a modest town beside the river Ara, a boy with curious eyes watched the world with unusual calm. His teachers said he was slow, yet his silence was full of thoughts no one could see. While others memorized lessons, he questioned why the compass needle moved, why light curved, why the stars shimmered even when unseen. His name was Albert, and from an early age, he preferred wondering to obeying. His family moved often, chasing work and stability. The sound of machines fascinated him, not for their noise, but for the hidden laws that made them move. In Italy, he wandered among hills, carrying notebooks filled with sketches and strange equations. He was neither strong nor athletic, but his patience was immense. He loved solitude, with a mind that stretched far beyond walls and roofs. When his father's business failed, Albert faced uncertainty. Yet he discovered music could comfort the restless mind. With his violin, he learned harmony, the invisible geometry of sound. Notes flowed like rivers of thought, linking emotion and reason. He realized that beauty and science spoke the same language, the language of order hidden beneath chaos. At school, discipline was strict, and curiosity was seen as rebellion. Still, Albert refused to let the spark dim. He began to study on his own, devouring books on mathematics and philosophy. He admired those who dared to think freely, who trusted imagination over authority. He believed truth was not handed down, but discovered through persistence and wonder. When exams arrived, he failed not from ignorance but from indifference. Rules bored him. Systems trapped him. Yet he held faith that understanding came not from obedience but from insight. He dreamed of light, of time, of the vast machinery of the universe turning silently beyond the reach of fear or power. His parents worried. Teachers complained. But inside Albert, a quiet revolution was forming. He would not fit into the pattern others demanded. He would reshape the pattern itself. For the world, he was still a student. For the future, he was a spark waiting to ignite the sky. He walked by the river one winter morning, snow settling on his coat, breath forming mist before him. The water flowed steadily, indifferent to cold. He thought of movement, of stillness, of what it meant for something to change and yet remain the same. He knew then that someday he would find the answer, not by memorizing but by seeing differently. And so the quiet boy walked on, unnoticed by history, carrying within him the first notes of a new symphony, one that would soon change the way humanity understood the very fabric of reality, the path of discovery. Years passed, and Albert found himself in Zurich, among books, equations, and minds as restless as his own. The Polytechnic Institute became his refuge. There, he studied mathematics and physics, not for grades but for clarity. His teachers praised precision. He searched for meaning. He believed that behind every formula lay a whisper of the universe, something eternal waiting to be understood. He was not the model student. Attendance bored him, but inspiration struck at unpredictable hours. He spent nights by the window, eyes on the stars, tracing invisible patterns across the sky. Sometimes he missed deadlines, but his notebooks were filled with ideas that would one day move mountains of thought. He sought unity, how light, space, and time danced together in a perfect rhythm. When he graduated, the world offered no grand welcome. Academic doors remained closed. His independent mind, once his pride, now became his obstacle. He wandered through cities searching for work, living modestly, often hungry but never hopeless. He taught, tutored, and dreamed, his belief in the beauty of truth unshaken. He once said to himself that imagination was greater than knowledge, for knowledge was limited, but imagination embraced the infinite. Eventually, he found a position at a patent office in Bern. To others, it was routine work. To him, it was sanctuary. Amid the hum of paperwork and ink, his mind soared. He reviewed inventions by day and explored the mysteries of the cosmos by night. Each design he read taught him about motion, energy, and cause. He began to notice patterns where others saw bureaucracy. In the quiet hours, he filled his small apartment with equations, scribbling on scraps of paper, lost in thought. The ticking clock on his desk became his companion, reminding him of time, the thread that connected everything. He wondered, was time absolute, or did it bend with motion? Could two observers see the same world differently and still both be right? His questions deepened. He no longer sought simple answers, but elegant truths. He imagined himself riding alongside a beam of light, watching how the world would appear. He felt that nature must be consistent, that beauty and simplicity were signs of truth. The more he studied, the more he trusted intuition. He sensed that behind the surface of ordinary things lay a structure grander than any cathedral. The city outside moved as always. People rushing to work, children laughing, trains crossing the bridges. But within that small apartment, something extraordinary was forming. The boundaries of time and space were beginning to tremble. And Albert, the quiet clerk, unaware of glory, was crafting ideas that would soon rewrite the laws of reality itself. The miracle year. The year was 1905, and Albert's modest desk in the patent office had become the birthplace of revolution. The air was thick with routine, yet inside his mind, storms of clarity gathered. That year, he wrote 4 papers, each one a spark that would light the future. He was 26, unknown, with no title, no laboratory, and no assistants, only persistence, imagination, and a faith in reason. In one paper, he revealed that light behaved as both wave and particle, a dual nature that defied the wisdom of textbooks. It was a bold challenge to the old order, and it opened a doorway to quantum theory. In another, he explained the invisible dance of molecules, showing how motion and heat were intertwined. He was dismantling walls between disciplines without permission, guided only by curiosity. Then came the paper that changed everything, the special theory of relativity. He showed that time and space were not fixed but woven together, flexible and alive. The faster something moved, the slower its time flowed. The closer approached light, the stranger its reality became. He discovered that the universe was not a stage where events happened, but a living fabric that shaped and was shaped by all motion. Out of his equations emerged a simple, elegant truth, that energy and mass were 2 faces of the same essence. E equals mc squared was more than a formula. It was the key to the hidden symmetry of the cosmos. It spoke of stars burning in silence, of matter transforming into light, of creation and destruction bound by a single rule. Few understood at first, but the world would one day tremble under its meaning. He sent his papers to journals, expecting nothing. Yet as scholars read his words, astonishment spread. He had turned physics inside out from a rented room with no funding and no fame. The quiet patent clerk had become a prophet of modern science. But to Albert, it was not triumph. It was understanding, the moment when truth revealed itself like dawn breaking over darkness. He continued his routine life as though nothing had changed. He walked the same streets, watched the same sky, played the same violin. But now he carried within him the knowledge that the boundaries of the universe were not as they seemed. The laws of nature were not cold commands, but symphonies of relativity, rhythm, and light. That year, history began to whisper his name. The world did not yet grasp what he had done, but time, his greatest companion, would ensure it never forgot. He had proven that imagination, when guided by reason, could reach beyond the stars. The clerk from Bern had become the architect of a new reality, and nothing would ever be the same again. The rising mind. Fame arrived slowly, like dawn through fog. Albert, once ignored, now found his papers discussed in universities across Europe. Professors who had dismissed and began to quote his work, and letters arrived from those eager to learn more. Yet recognition did not alter his manner. He remained humble, amused by attention and skeptical of authority. His hair grew wilder. His clothes remained simple, and his laughter carried the warmth of a man who valued thought over appearances. He accepted a teaching post, guiding young minds to see the world not as a machine, but as a mystery governed by harmony. His lectures were less about formulas and more about insight. He urged his students to think freely, to distrust convention, to feel the elegance of truth. Imagination, he wrote, is a compass that points beyond what we know. He saw in each question a doorway to discovery, never a wall to stop at. Yet his thoughts kept evolving. The special theory of relativity had explained motion and time for constant speeds, but the universe itself was never still. Gravity, that ancient enigma, still waited to be understood. Newton had described its pull, but not its nature. Albert sensed it was not a force reaching across space, but something woven into the geometry of existence itself. He began to imagine space not as emptiness, but as fabric, bending, curving, shaping paths of stars and planets. He spent long nights staring into candlelight, his mind adrift among galaxies unseen. He thought of how time slowed near massive bodies, how light curved under gravity's hand. The vision became clearer, as if the universe whispered its secret through silence. Slowly, through years of reflection, equations took form, precise, luminous, daring. They would soon lead to a theory that would change not only physics, but the human sense of place in the cosmos. Outside, the world was shifting. Nations prepared for conflict, and the air of Europe grew tense. Albert's ideas crossed borders, even as politics built walls. He believed in unity, in the shared curiosity that belonged to all humankind. Science, he felt, was a common language of peace, an act of faith and reason over fear. Still, he remained solitary in thought. His colleagues admired him, but few could follow the path of his imagination. He walked through parks alone, feeding birds, lost in calculation, unaware of fame trailing behind him. To him, every blade of grass was an expression of the same laws he sought in the heavens. He believed that understanding the universe meant learning humility, that the deeper one looked, the smaller one felt, yet the greater one became. And so, step by step, the quiet student from Bern was becoming the voice of modern thought, reshaping the way humanity would see gravity, time, and itself. But the road to truth, he knew, was long, and even the brightest mind must walk it with patience and awe. The curved universe. After years of solitude and silent work, Albert's greatest insight took form. The general theory of relativity, born from imagination and stubborn clarity, was completed in 1915. It was no longer just about how objects moved through space and time, but how space and time themselves could bend and flow. The universe, he revealed, was not rigid but alive, a fabric that curved around stars and planets, shaping their motion without invisible threads. He presented his equations to the Prussian Academy of Sciences, his voice calm, his notes precise. The room was filled with scholars, some doubtful, some awed. Few understood the depth of what they witnessed. Gravity was no longer a pull between masses, but a geometry of reality itself. Space told matter how to move, and matter told space how to curve. It was poetry hidden in mathematics, the fusion of thought and beauty. At first, the world did not know what to make of it. His ideas were too strange, too vast. Yet Albert felt peace, for he trusted the truth would stand without defense. Years passed before proof arrived. Then, during a solar eclipse in 1919, British astronomers observed the light of distant stars bending around the sun exactly as he had predicted. The news spread swiftly. Einstein's universe had triumphed. Overnight, he became a symbol of genius. Newspapers across continents printed his face. Crowds gathered wherever he went. Reporters compared him to Columbus of the cosmos, the man who had redrawn the map of reality. Yet fame to him was a shadow, fleeting and loud. He preferred the quiet hum of thought to the applause of strangers. When asked how it felt to be the most famous scientist alive, he smiled and said only that the equations had not changed. Still, he used his voice with purpose. The First World War had left the world wounded, and nationalism divided nations that once shared curiosity. Albert spoke for peace, for reason over hatred. He saw science as a bridge between peoples, proof that truth had no borders. Letters poured in from young thinkers inspired by his courage, not only his intellect, but his humanity. His work continued. He explored the mysteries of the cosmos, dreaming of a unified theory that could bind all forces of nature together, a single law beneath every atom and galaxy. He did not seek to conquer nature, but to understand it, believing that knowledge must serve compassion. At night, when the noise of fame faded, he returned to his violin. The same hands that wrote equations now drew melodies from strings. In those moments, the boundaries between science and art dissolved. He felt the rhythm of the universe in sound, curved, infinite, serene. The same harmony that shaped galaxies echoed softly to the music of his heart. The weight of light. The world now revered his name. Yet Albert remained detached from its glamour. Honors arrived, medals gleamed, universities opened their doors, and still he walked the lectures with wrinkled sleeves and an absent gaze. He accepted the Nobel Prize not for relativity, which few yet dare to test, but for explaining the photoelectric effect, how light could free electrons like birds from cages. It was proof that energy came in packets, a foundation for the strange realm of quantum theory. Though celebrated, he felt uneasy. Quantum physics, born partly from his ideas, seemed to defy the calm order he believed in. Its uncertainty disturbed him. He admired its success, yet distrusted its spirit. To him, the universe was rational. Every event had cause. The new physicist spoke of chance, of randomness woven into reality. He could not accept that nature played dice. Still, he respected those who followed this path. Even when it diverged from his own, he turned his thoughts again toward unity. Gravity and electromagnetism, two great forces, waited to be joined under a single idea. He filled notebooks with symbols, tracing invisible patterns through space. Decades passed, and though the dream eluded him, he never abandoned it. For him, the pursuit was a reward, the journey more sacred than the arrival. The years brought change beyond equations. His hair whitened, his steps slowed, but his eyes retained their brightness. He traveled widely, speaking in halls where students listened with reverence. He urged them not to seek fame, but to seek truth. He warned that technology, without compassion, could turn knowledge into danger. Science, he said, must remain a servant of humanity, not its master. Then came the rise of shadows. Across Europe, intolerance grew, and storms of hatred gathered again. Albert, Jewish by birth and humanist by spirit, watched with sorrow as fear replaced reason. He left Germany, his homeland of thought, and crossed the ocean to America. Behind him burned libraries and futures. Ahead of him waited exile and a new beginning. He found refuge at Princeton, where quiet gardens and thoughtful colleagues offered peace. Yet even there his heart remained restless. He missed the old cafes of Europe, the sound of German poetry, the faces of friends lost distance or war. Still, he continued to teach, to write, to dream. His chalk traced universes on the blackboard, his mind undimmed by age. In those years, Albert became more than scientist. He became conscience. He spoke against war, against division, against indifference. He believed that intellect without moral vision was empty. To understand the stars, he said, one must first respect the life beneath them. And though the world listened to his words, he remained the same modest soul, the boy who once wondered why the compass needle moved, still searching for what lay behind its pull, the troubled genius. In America, Albert found both refuge and responsibility. The campus at Princeton became his sanctuary, a place where he could think freely, surrounded by trees and silence. Yet beyond its calm paths, the world was once again trembling. War returned with iron fury, and science was called upon to serve destruction. Letters reached him from colleagues who sought his name to open doors of power. Among them came a plea to warn of new weapons, of energy locked within matter, waiting to be unleashed. Reluctantly, he signed a letter to the American president, urging attention to the possibility of atomic energy. His equation, written years before in quiet wonder, had become the seed of a terrifying bloom. He did not build the bomb, but his insight had made it possible. The knowledge weighed heavily upon him. He mourned that something born of curiosity and beauty could be turned toward devastation. For the rest of his life, he carried that burden like a shadow over light. When the war ended and cities lay in ashes, Albert raised his voice again for peace. He spoke not as a physicist, but as a human being who had seen the dual nature of knowledge, its power to create and to destroy. He urged nations to unite under reason, to form councils of science guided by ethics. To him, true wisdom was not in discovery, but in the courage to use discovery with conscience. He withdrew more from public ceremonies, seeking simplicity. His home was filled with books, papers, and quiet music. Visitors found him humble and kind, offering tea with gentle hands. Children adored him. They saw not the scholar, but the warmth of a grandfather who smiled at their curiosity. To them, he spoke not of relativity, but of wonder, telling them never to stop asking why. Letters continued to arrive from across the globe. Students seeking guidance, leaders seeking advice, dreamers seeking approval. He answered many with patience, his handwriting uneven yet thoughtful. He believed communication was a duty, for knowledge belonged to everyone. Fame could fade, but kindness, he said, was timeless. As his body aged, his mind remained luminous. He still rose early, walking through Princeton's quiet streets, eyes tracing the morning sky. He carried no pretense, only the weight of questions that would never end. He had seen triumph and tragedy, and through both he found serenity in understanding that humanity's greatest strength was not intellect alone, but compassion intertwined with curiosity. He knew that his time was nearing its close, but he felt no fear. For him, death was not an end, only a return to the mystery he had spent a lifetime exploring. Energy could not be destroyed, only transformed, and he too was part of that eternal law. The endless horizon. The final years of Albert's life were marked by calm reflection. He no longer chased recognition or discovery, yet his mind never rested. Each morning, sunlight spilled across his desk, illuminating half-finished papers filled with equations that sought unity, the same dream he had carried since youth. He knew the answer might never come, but the pursuit itself was sacred. To seek harmony in nature was, for him, the purest act of faith. He often spoke of simplicity, that true understanding meant stripping away the unnecessary until only truth remained. Visitors found him surrounded by stacks of letters and worn notebooks, a violin resting beside the window. He played softly when words failed him, letting the melody speak of wonder and gratitude. Music and science, he believed, were twin expressions of the same mystery, one through logic, the other through feeling. Though his body weakened, his humor never dimmed. He greeted every day with quiet curiosity, even when pain lingered. Friends worried, but he reassured them with a smile, saying that the universe had given him more time than he ever expected. When students came to see him, he reminded them that questions mattered more than answers, and that humility was a companion of wisdom. Outside, the century he had shaped marched forward. Space exploration began, new theories arose, and technology advanced beyond imagination. Albert watched these changes with both pride and caution. He marveled at the human mind's reach, but feared its neglect of the heart. He spoke gently of responsibility, that knowledge without love could not build a better world. In the spring of 1955, as his health declined, he asked for no hospital, no ceremony. He preferred the quiet of his study, the window open to the sound of birds. He spent his last days reading, writing a few final lines about the unity of all forces. When the end came, it was peaceful, a return to stillness, a merger with the very laws he had sought to understand. News of his passing spread swiftly, and the world mourned not just a scientist, but a spirit that had expanded the boundaries of human thought. Yet Albert had always believed that no life truly ends. Energy transforms, ideas endure, and inspiration flows endlessly through generations. His words, his equations, his example, all became part of that eternal current. Even now, when people gaze at the stars, they see them through the lens he shaped. Every clock that ticks, every beam of light that travels, carries the echo of his insight. His story reminds humanity that greatness is born not from privilege, but from curiosity, patience, and the courage to see differently. And so, the quiet boy who once watched the compass needle turn became a symbol of what it means to wonder, a testament that imagination, joined with humility, can illuminate the infinite horizon of existence. What we can learn, Albert Enstein's story is a lesson in the power of curiosity, patience, and perseverance. True discovery does not come from intelligence alone. It comes from thinking deeply, asking questions every day, and facing challenges with determination. Learning English, like understanding the universe or solving difficult problems, requires focus, persistence, and consistent practice. Every small effort strengthens your mind and builds confidence, just as every calculation or experiment shapes understanding. Mistakes are not failures. They are lessons. Each attempt to solve a problem, whether in language or in life, is a step forward. By studying, reflecting, and applying what you learn, you develop not only knowledge, but also inner strength, resilience, and the courage to pursue greater goals. Albert Einstein's story shows that curiosity, preparation, and determination can create lasting impact. By following his example, you can grow stronger, not just in English, but in wisdom, perseverance, and life. Keep your goals clear, your spirit strong, and let every new word, every question, and every small effort guide you toward success.